Hello, everybody. Good evening. It's Monday, the 14th of July, and it's 7:30. And we've got the whole crew here tonight. There's me, Karis, Mike, and Shannon. And thank you all for joining in. Slightly cooler tonight. Sorry I dropped out on Thursday. It was just so hot that I couldn't face going up the stairs to the loft. Uh, so what I thought we would talk about tonight, um, although if anyone's got any comments, do please raise them and we can talk about anything you want to talk about. Um, but I've got a couple of things here on the notes. Um, Mainly, I thought I'd talk about training, and that's a combination of training in the sense of sort of somebody addressing a group of people and saying, "Hello, I'm going to tell you about this or that sort of training." And then there's just stuff that's online, which you may not know about, which are useful places to find information. And I should say the reason I thought of this theme for tonight was because Karis and I have been training a new member of support staff at Virgo Solicitors, and it's an interesting opportunity to sort of step back and think, well, what is it? Where is it we want to get to with the training? What is it we want to do? And the thing that sort of forward in my mind is that often training is seen as making people knowledgeable about the law. So you could say, well, the following, you sort of name that case. If I say Pulhofer, you might say suitability, or what's got a Paniatu would be vulnerability, things like that. Uh, that's really important, and you do need to have a sort of set of antennae so that you can sort of start spotting a problem early on based on reading all these judgments and things. But there's other things like knowing which forms to fill in and knowing what jargon is, and also knowing how to deal with people, which is quite difficult in itself, especially people who are in crisis, which is a lot of the people we're dealing with here. Uh, for instance, if you ask somebody, "Can you tell me a bit about your problem?" You could be there for 3 hours, and at the end of it, all you've done is sort of had a bonding session with them and not got all the information you need, which is frustrating for everybody. So I'll feed back over time as to how that's going, because I think people might benefit from knowing that. And if I do find time, I think I might try and make videos based on what Karis and I are doing, and then people can see the sort of modules. But uh, before, I think I'll just summarize the training stuff, and then we'll talk about that court case, because that might be an opportunity to springboard. There's one case that's Nearly Legal reported, I think yesterday or the day before, which I haven't put the Nearly Legal, unless it's just here maybe. Yes, Giles Peake has been doing a catch-up session because I think he's been away on holiday, and he's come back and there's lots of different cases, but the most interesting one, which I'll talk about in a bit, is this one, another Wolf and Forest case, another suitability case. In fact, it's suitability and personal housing plan, housing needs assessment. And so we'll come back to that. But just to go back to training, I'll just go through these places where you might want to go. If anyone's looking to learn more about housing law, these are the places I would recommend you go. Obviously, there's Mike and Shannon, best practice. And this is actually your training page I saw, um, which I didn't. I think that's is this how you would, if people want to contact you and stuff about training? It's not like where your list of up and coming courses is.
So I haven't touched that website for like 3 years, so
Oh,
we just use
yeah.
Eventbrite. I don't even know how to log into it, to be honest. I probably should do that at some point.
Okay, because the place I can go, hopefully, I can go YouTube. This is where you really want to go if you want to find out what the output is. It's this bit, which looks a bit similar, but is actually the YouTube channel. And I don't know how you do it, but the output pace is amazing. Not just the live streams, but I saw you had one on data protection compensation. Is that the latest one?
Yeah, I recorded it 3 months ago, but I've been waiting.
Oh,
I've got another one about multi-agency meetings to go up. But I I shared it on Facebook and LinkedIn and got the usual response on Facebook, which is fine. On LinkedIn, like hardly anyone's touching it because I think it's not LinkedIn material. It's rather too cynical or whatever.
yes. Yeah, LinkedIn has to have a sort of certain positivity and I don't know, sort of not too critical of the status quo. Uh, so I would recommend anybody. I mean, it's almost worth having a database of these so we could tag them, really, isn't it? Have you like we've got with the ombudsman decisions? Um, but it would take quite a long time to produce, I think. Um, but so, Mike, I was just asking before we went live. I mean, who are you? Who do you think these are really aimed at? Is it to have a better informed public, um, or
It,
frontline workers, or
it was originally designed for frontline workers, but what I've realised is that most frontline workers aren't particularly inquisitive, and it's mostly been people who are going through it at the moment who want to know a bit about it to find it. And then there's kind of like the regulars or whatever who kind of, yeah, I think most of them are probably, most of the vocal ones have been through the system. But there are some kind of people who sort of watch and don't say anything ever, but they're watching it. So yeah, I think the idea is to, I don't know, equip people to actually go and challenge council themselves because there is a fairly good success rate with doing it that way rather than kind of, I mean, probably less so in London, but I've seen a lot of people get compensation or get overturned complaints and stuff, uphill complaints, should I say, overturned decisions. So
I've noticed that the ombudsman stuff, which you tend to talk about more than I do because you study it more, which is good, is becoming much more mainstream now. I noticed that the legal action group housing law update thing um, reports ombudsman complaints now, or ombudsman report findings. You know, there was two or three on there, and I thought I've really got to just start treating this as mainstream. But then it made me think we've really got to. And this could be another video session. Is how to. I mean, you've done a session on how to make a complaint, but I think if we had some templates and stuff and just said, look, all you've got to do is tell your story, put it in this first letter, and expect the rejection on the second letter. Then you can tell the story and tell them why you're not happy with the first one. And then when you get your second rejection, you can just send all that off to the ombudsman. It's sort of not. Am I making it seem more simple than it
no, I
is?
think well, I get even simpler and use ChatGPT. So yeah, write what you want to write, what your complaint is. Get ChatGPT to write it in a nice formal complaint. It does a good job at that. So as long as you kind of know what the problem was, which I guess is half the difficulty is knowing actually which bit of the law council's broken. But if you know that much, then ChatGPT will be able to write a perfectly decent letter.
Yeah, that sounds good. So we could come back to that one for another time. Um, I should just say hello to Tiff, who is so far my only comment for the evening. So thank you, Tiff, and hello to you. Um, so I'll go back now. I'll show you some of these other places where people might not know about. Um, Slightly off. Well, I think this organisation most people will know about. Um, this isn't they. I mean, if you ever want to know anything about housing law, really, I mean, I tend to do it myself. I just go to the shelter, and if I wanted to know about sort of personal housing plan, this might well be the first place I stop um, and have a look at that. So fantastic. I mean, that is training in the sense that it answers your questions as they come up. So much praise to
I'm pretty
Shelter.
I'm pretty sure I think quite a lot of it's accessible for free. I'm
Yeah,
not
it
quite
is. Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
I
I'm
don't know.
not paying anything for this.
No, but as in like the actual training courses they do, I'm pretty sure
Oh,
they do
yes. Yeah,
ones
let me come back to
which are
that because
free.
I did exchange some emails with them today about this. So if I go back to my initial place, which is this, um, it's a little bit unclear, or it was to me, what the training is. So if you go, or what's available. So what I did was I went to upcoming training courses, and you'll see that they've got these ones happening in July, but it wasn't. I'm sorry if I'm being thick, but I can't see when in July that is, and I suspect it may not actually have happened. It just depends on how many people want to go on it. Oh no, here we go. So they got Monday the 14th of July. There's a 90-minute course on, I guess that's on understanding homelessness vulnerability, that one. And you can get in for free if you're eligible. And I think, let's just see, I asked the question, I'm a solicitor, am I eligible? I do legal aid, am I eligible? And the answer is no, you're not eligible for anything, you have to pay. Whereas if I worked, some of these other folk are entitled to free training. I suspect, I'm not sure about members of the public. I think shelters courses are maybe aimed at organisations. But maybe if somebody got in touch and said, look, I'm on the dole or low income, you might be able to get in for free if you're interested. But citizens' advice, local authorities are a bit miffed about that they get in for free, whereas I don't. But um, I can understand it. There is this idea in the public imagination that solicitors are all driving around in Jaguars, uh, going to fancy dinners. So we don't get in for free, but good. I mean, I think you need to approach shelters to find out if you can get into those courses. But really, really good. I can't say I've ever been on. I don't think I've ever been on a shelter course, but judged by the website, I'm sure they're very good. So if I come back to, I put the legal aid group. I should have said legal action group there. I'm sorry. And I think I got a lot of my training years ago from the legal action group. Oh, I know. Sorry, there we go. So you can see they've got quite a good site here. I'm going on this one tomorrow, actually. Immigration law for housing practitioners, which I think I've got to pay I've forgotten. It's probably finished taking bookings now, but it wasn't cheap. But it's a very useful subject for me because immigration law is something complicated that I've usually when I come back to it, I've forgotten it again. So I have to refresh my memory every year or so. But it's very reassuring to be able to go on a course like that. Now, those are the main sort of, sorry, Legal Action Group do other courses on possession and what have you. Homeless Link, I did include them. They seem to have some interesting courses, but a lot of it seemed to be around sheltered housing, supported housing. Although these are interesting courses in the sense that they are looking at it from a whole different angle. It's not just the usual sort of categories. I mean, preventing eviction, suicide prevention, uh, and then hoarding. That's a really important one, which um, is much misunderstood. Um, and I think much more common than people think. So Homeless Link are a good place to go for courses. DG Legal, I don't know if people know of DG Legal. They tend to provide sort of management consultancy for lawyers, but nevertheless they do some. So a lot of their courses are very lawyer sort of compliance with lawyer regulations based, but occasionally they do courses on. Uh, See, there we go. Legal aid billing. Oh, but that's for crime. They're very useful for solicitors, but for the rest of you, probably pretty boring and not much use, but very valuable for us. Now, um, this is not in any order of significance, by the way, just as I was finding, because nearly legal. I think I make enough fuss about nearly legal to uh, prove that I am a big fan, and I think nearly legal is a place where most people go to find out what's happening, and maybe it can be a bit intimidating because Giles is a solicitor who maintains this. And I think actually, I'm not sure if it's still the same, but there are a sort of panel of people that write on here. It's not just Giles. but he does seem to do a lot. There used to be other names, but actually maybe they've stopped doing the panel because every single one here seems to be Charles Peaker. And I don't know how I did once ask him how he found the time. I said, "Do you just go home in the evening and sit with a laptop on your knee when most of us are watching TV or something?" He said, "Yeah, that's what I do." So he certainly, and he's been doing that for about 20 years now. This has been going since just coming. It must be coming up for a celebration of the anniversary soon. Um, but the really good thing about this site is don't be intimidated by it, because you may find it's all sort of a bit. It seems like people in the know sort of isn't it amazing what this judicial review is about? And unless you may find that a bit intimidating if you don't know judicial review stuff. But if you just read these things, if you want to get a potted sort of knowledge of a subject matter, then you can do a lot worse than read one of these. Just pick a judgment, particularly say this is what I'm going to talk about later. But these judgments are really good for summarizing the law and how they apply to a particular set of facts. Because once you've gone through the background, you get to the actual legal issues and then you get the applicable law. So you get a really good summary of the subject. So if you wanted to know about Section 189A assessments and personal housing plans, here it all is set out and summarised. You go down, you get the basic cases that are involved in it. Very impressive. And so I find that a really good subject, because the other day I was thinking I really don't know much about rent repayment orders. In fact, I know next to nothing about rent repayment orders. But I saw that Giles had mentioned a couple of cases in the catch up, and I thought if I go away and read one of these judgments, I'll probably be able to get a sort of blag my way through a conversation as if I knew about the subject just based on reading one. So this is really good training. I think it's indispensable for anybody involved in housing law not to be able to keep up with what's going on. And it makes you wonder. It's so long ago now that we were without Nearly Legal that it's hard to think what we did. But I guess we just basically read Legal Action magazine and put our ears to the ground. So I didn't mention 42 Bedford Row, which has quite a nice website here. It's this is an interesting chambers, because 42 Bedford Row, a lot of barristers' chambers fall on one side or other of the barricades. There's the sort of barristers who work for local government and barristers who work for homeless applicants and tenants and things. And you'd say Garden Court, Doughty Street, Pump Court, they tend to all be sort of for the people. And then Cornerstone, um, Five Paper Buildings, they tend to be for the landlords. And they would probably deny that because there is this sort of taxi rank principle in at the bar, which says you're supposed to work for everybody, but it doesn't quite work like that. Although, having said that, Lindsay Johnson, we'll see, who's from Cornerstone, is actually acting for the applicant in this case we'll talk about in a minute. But look at there's some really good courses on here. Like there was one that I saw, social housing fraud, and I think that is, you can tell by the way it's written. The title suggests it's anti-tenant, in that it's not about people being denied social housing; it's people fraudulently applying for it. A succession claim fraud. There's another one. Anyone who A succession, by the way, for anybody not familiar with this, is quite a common problem. It's where, say, if you live in a family home and the tenancy is in the name of your mother or your grandmother or something, and they pass away, you may have a right to take over their tenancy, and that's succession. Um, the problem is, and it's a bit like, I suppose, if you come into a lot of money, suddenly all these people come out of the woodwork who have been your mates for years, and they just lost touch and they want to be your friend. The same that if somebody dies, it does tend to attract people to come and claim to have been living in the property. But nevertheless, they are all treated it's not particularly nice. You've just lost a relative, and then you have your landlords treating you as if you're sort of a criminal because you ask if you can take over. But they tend to have the team that deals with succession is often called the succession fraud team. And I believe that if you do give a man a hammer, then everything looks like a nail. And if you give a man a uniform and call him a fraud officer, he's busy frisking everybody rather than trying to express commiserations and that if you've lost a relative and to see what your chances are. But really good. I mean, again, if you want to learn how to fight a case, it's a good way to. If you're on the receiving end of this treatment, then it's good to see what the guidance is, and or what the other side are doing. But having said that, some of the stuff these guys do is actually tenant orientated. If I show you another one, so these are all videos on YouTube. They're not courses. You just click on it and it'll take you through. So, introduction to disability discrimination for housing lawyers. I mean, that's like a really good thing to do. Hoarding again. The so these are useful subjects. So if anyone wants to find out more, that's where to go. But I'll show you the last of the websites. I think that I know there's a couple more websites. Oh, YouTube channels. Sorry. So we've got Garden Court, who are really good. That one about immigration law, that's actually been done, that I'm going to tomorrow. That's been done by Garden Court through Legal Action Group. But if you look at some of these ones, there's really good. There's this one I really want to watch, but I just haven't had a chance, which is, yeah, preventing homelessness when asylum support ends. A really common problem that people who get granted asylum have is they get put in some place by the Home Office and or accommodation by the Home Office, and then they get lesser. It used to be the same when people who were in care turned 18. Now, the good news is happy birthday, you're 18. The bad news is we're kicking you out of your supported accommodation because you're not eligible anymore. And asylum seekers get that. So they get told, you've now got recourse to public funds, you can apply to the council. Um, and so good luck to you because we're evicting you from the current accommodation in 2 weeks' time. And we're not going to bother making a referral to local authority or anything crazy like that. And we appreciate you can't speak very good English. And so then they go to the local authority and they get told, oh, go and find yourself somewhere and all that sort of stuff. So that's a good course that I would recommend anybody that's advising people who have applied for asylum and like to get it. So very, very good courses. Doughty Street we know about because Mike, you've been on. Did you ever go on any of their courses, Shannon? I know Mike's been on a couple, haven't you? In fact, I first met you on a Doughty Street course, Mike, I think.
Yeah, I must have done that 3 or 4. Yeah.
Um, so really good stuff. There's the one that I think that one is deceptive, this, because that is all day. And if you click on that, I think you get about 8 hours of stuff. And so really good. Sometimes these really good courses are hidden away amongst the ones that look a little bit more, well, not so relevant to what we're doing. But I'll tell you, if you really want to see high quality stuff again, is Cornerstone. Now, these guys are almost exclusively and almost a little bit too enthusiastically pro local government and landlord. Um, if you're doing a case, it's all. I mean, they are very, very good barristers, I have to say, and they really do know their stuff. But they do these courses, and as long as if you imagine putting your glasses on the other way around, look at this one here: avoiding successful homelessness appeals. That means all the things that a local authority needs to do not to get done over at appeal stage. So obviously you want to watch that because you want to see what they're getting when they're getting it wrong.
I watched that a little while ago, Will,
Oh,
and it
did
wasn't
you?
actually it's not as juicy as you'd think. They basically kind of
Uh,
said if you want to avoid getting judicially reviewed, do your job right the first time. And it's like, okay, well, that makes sense. So it wasn't kind of like telling you loopholes of like things to. It was just kind of saying these are the things you need to make sure you're covering in your decisions, which were kind of fair. So that's because I saw the title and I
oh,
was like, I need to see what that was about.
I'm trying to see some other ones that I've been on here that are good, but they have done some good. See, the housing fraud in the courts, getting the best evidence. Again, useful if you're representing tenants and people who are going to be accused of this sort of thing, because you can see what you should be getting as well. So those are the ones, and this is on my blog here. So what you got to do if you want to see what I was talking about is go back here, and there's the stuff. So I'll leave. That's all I've got to
Yes.
say about. Oh, sorry, Shannon. Did you?
No, I was gonna say I've just popped one in the chat as well. So Public Law Project
Oh, thank
on
you.
their learning page, they have basically loads of free content, and then if you click on like the learning portal, and it's really like high quality stuff. But then if you also look on their events, like they've got one on the 17th that's just strategic litigation and welfare benefits, and that's a seminar that's got like Doughty Street Chambers, MS Society, Child Poverty Action Group, Garden Court North, and various other people. And like the prices are really good. So it goes from like either £40, £20, or free for that. But all the other ones are sort of free. But there's, yeah, it's a bit weird because there's two different places you can sort of access free things. Like they've got the portal, but then you've got their events page that has, I guess, current things that are more juicy. But yeah, I just thought I'd throw that
Yeah,
into the
yeah,
mix.
that's really good. Thank you. I'll put that on the task on the blog post afterwards. Really good. Yeah. Well, that's a question I think all of us should watch. How to build a just and dignified immigration system. But anyway, I'm going to resist the temptation to start talking about that. So thank you very much. We've got a couple more, just a couple of people putting greetings on, so I won't go there. So what I will do now, if we just move on, is there's this really good case that I mentioned earlier, which is called AAR on the application of, sorry, it's on the application of RR versus Waltham Forest. So it's a judicial review in the High Court. And this there seems to be a recurring theme in homelessness where a lot of the case law is going at the moment. The big fights are really about suitability of accommodation. And sorry, I haven't got the right screen on. I'll go back to yeah. Bear with me, the one that's got that. Yeah. So the big fights are about suitability of accommodation and by implication, housing needs assessments. Now, last week we had that case, was it 2 weeks ago? The one where they said the applicant tried to argue that because they hadn't had a housing needs assessment, the local authority was not in a position to make them a legal offer of accommodation because they hadn't assessed what would be suitable for them. And in that case, the court said no, they don't have to do a housing needs assessment, especially where the offer is obviously suitable. But this one here is interesting because they did a housing needs assessment, but they didn't do it well at all. And I think it's a case of where they could have got away with it, but they just were being really arrogant about it, and dismissive of the things that were raised. And that made it appear to the court as if they hadn't been giving the applicant a fair hearing. So what happens is this applicant tried to run an argument. I don't mean to trivialize it, but many people that I deal with, they really want a council flat out of this as a homeless application. And some people, unfortunately, still believe that they're entitled to a council flat because, as I may say many times, until was it about 2011, 2012, that was the only way you could discharge a homeless duty. You could give temporary accommodation, which is why it was called temporary, would just be while you were waiting for your either negative decision letter on entitlement or a positive decision and an inevitable offer of housing, council or housing association property. So when that finished, people were then faced with getting put in what is generally considered to be sort of fairly third-rate private sector accommodation, much of which, I mean, I had it again today. You know, you get somebody goes to view a property, and I'm waiting to hear what they said. I had two lots of people today who'd gone to view properties. The first one, the inevitable response was the photograph showing the mold, the damp patches on the walls that were there already when they were going to view it, let alone sort of painted over and maybe reappearing. So they wanted an immediate review of that, was fair enough. One person did like their accommodation, which was good. But here, the person didn't like their accommodation, but they wanted to run an argument based on their special needs that only council accommodation would be suitable. Now, that I think that can work sometimes where somebody needs physical adaptations made to a property, such as putting rails in to help you support yourself and stuff, which a private landlord may not be willing to do. But as in this case, councils will say, well, if we can find a landlord who's prepared to do that, it'll still be suitable for you. And stupidly, in this case, Waltham Forest had a recommendation. They've got a thing at Waltham Forest called the Single Homeless Project, which seems to be a subdivision of the housing department or somebody they contract out to, who'd done the housing needs assessment. And they said, yes, this person really does need public sector accommodation. And what happened was when they came to offer something, they sort of ignored that and said, well, you know, we'll see when we get there. And that's what they got reviewed for, because they hadn't said, yes, we accept this. And the danger was the person would get an unsuitable offer. So they lost the case on that basis, that they hadn't actually said yes or no, we accept this recommendation or not. If they'd said yes, we accept the recommendation and we'll keep looking, they'd have been fine. And they could have probably got away with saying, well, we found something excellent in the private sector and we think it meets your needs, despite what this earlier recommendation was. But they didn't. They just said, no, we're not going to bother. And so they lost. But what was really interesting, well, there was two really interesting points that come out of it. One, and this is a good example of what local authorities do in court, is they had a barrister, Matt Hutchings, who is a very, very talented barrister. I got my arse badly kicked by him in a case years ago, which I was really, he took on a QC when he wasn't a QC. He is a KC now, I think, but he wasn't then. He was really, really good. But he was trying to run an argument to say that you can't judicially review housing needs assessments and what's the content of a personal housing plan, because you could go for a Section 202 review. Now, this raises the complicated issue, which most people probably get a bit headachy on, which is which decisions by local authorities can you challenge by way of a review, and which ones have to go to judicial review. And there is a list in the Housing Act of the ones that are covered by review. But the rule of thumb is that if it's a duty, if it's about what duty they owe you, whether you're intentionally homeless or whether your priority need or whether accommodation is suitable and they've discharged their duty, that's going to be a review most of the time. Whereas anything else is judicial review. So in this case, when they were saying you haven't done a proper housing needs assessment, that should have been a judicial review. But they tried to argue, oh, no, it can't be judicial review because if we make you an offer of unsuitable accommodation based on this dodgy assessment, then you'll have a right of review. But you won't have that until we make you an offer. So you're in limbo until then. And the court said, no, that can't be right. As Lindsay Johnson put it very well, that would create a sort of legal vacuum where you just didn't know where you stood until you got an offer. And what else is really important, the one big takeaway from this point, which I haven't mentioned until now, which is more than just me sort of talking about individuals and legal gossip, is this point here at the end, right? And it's about the duty when you're carrying out, when a local authority is carrying out a housing needs assessment and coming up with a personal housing plan, that plan should include helping you to apply for Part 6 social housing. So if I just show you here, where's it? Sorry, I'm in the wrong. It's here. If we go into the actual judgment, go to the end, And I'll just take a moment because it is really important just to find a bit where he says this. Yes, here we go. The final, this is it. Should the defendant have included the steps to secure social housing in the personal housing plan? Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but anybody out there who looks at personal housing plans will know that they tend to be very vague documents, which usually say something like, you will look for somewhere yourself in the private sector and the council will let you know if they find anything. It's very, very low quality and nothing specific. But it doesn't, what it won't do is say, we'll help you look into the housing register and see about making an application for social housing. But this case says it should. It says the final micro issue relates to steps that could or should have been included in the housing plan. So it says Section 189A requires the local authority to seek and agree and record in writing the steps which the authority under this part will take, basically. And it's then got, part 6. Yeah, so it says basically Section 189A says you've got to come up with a plan for what you're going to do to help them. Part 6 provides for allocation of social housing. And so it says at the end here, while I accept that social housing allocation falls under Part 6, the duty to secure suitable accommodation of whatever kind arises out of Section 1932. So it's not logical to exclude the kinds of supported accommodation that could be provided to secure allocation under Part 6 from the personal housing plan. So my reading of that is that they actually have to say, yes, we'll help you find a council place. And that, I think, involves answering, a lot of the questions you get on your live stream, Mike, sort of, if I've got a job and then I lose a job and something else happens, does that mean I go into band B or something? And the answer often is, well, have a look at the allocation policy and then think. But this means that the local authority would have to be undertaking something akin to that and actually saying, yes, we'll help you fill in the application. And if you get some negative response, we'll see if that's appropriate and we'll assist you with that. So I think that's a really good step forward, because I've thought that all along, that this applying for under Part 6 is quite a sort of mysterious business to most people, and you don't really know whether you're getting messed around or not. But the good thing with this is that if you have any concerns about it, I think you could actually run a challenge based on the fact that the personal housing plan doesn't set out clearly what it is that they've done for you, what they're going to do for you, or whether you've got any prospect of success. So that's something useful to know, is I think that you should ask the local authority to include helping you get a council place. Not that I'm saying you'll get one, but you've got a better chance of getting one, I think, if somebody's actually looking in a fair and balanced way who actually works for the council and helping you with it, than if you're left on your own. So that's the end of that summary of the case. And that's really all at the end of my speech for this evening. Does anybody else want to come back on that or anything else? Nope. Well, let me see. I haven't got any comments. And so I guess that's getting towards that's everything to cover for tonight. I hope it was useful. I'll put that public law project stuff on the site. One thing I have done actually, well, since I've got is I have actually, if I go back to my blog, one thing I hadn't done, I don't know why I hadn't. I go to there. In the resources, I have finally, I put the Virgo solicitors. If you're looking for a solicitor, you can click on the Virgo solicitors Google form and give your details there, and we can try and get back to you. So that is there now. And also, if you're looking for a solicitor and for some reason that doesn't work, you can get this list of other solicitors in various locations. You can see it's mostly London. We've just got, I think Turpin Miller have the distinction of being the only firm outside London. Apologies to anyone else. If anyone wants to be on this list, please let me know. So that's on there now, along with yeah, there's the places to find. If you, that's a slightly more detailed thing about places you can look for legal information. But that's it. That's everything for tonight. So, is everybody around on Thursday? Cool. So, if everyone's all right, shall I just say thank you very much and good night? Yep. Okay. Bye then. Damn. Did I? Yeah, that is the end. Thanks. I've closed everyone else off, but now I'll close myself off.